No, it's nothing new that Pulsar has always been very wonky with their first batches. However, this time around with the Xlite V3 that I received, it is a completely different story. This mouse is just as solid as anything else you could possibly imagine coming from either Lamps or Vaxi or anything like that for me personally with my copy. And I think that this is a gigantic step up from what the V2 used to be like, and also just for the Pulsar brand in general. If you are at all interested in EC type shapes and are looking for a new ERGO mouse, you absolutely need to watch this video because this might just be your new nugget of the year. Before we go into the full review, I wanted to mention that only about 12% of you are actually subscribed to the channel. So if you are enjoying the content, please make sure to hit that sub button and also the bell right next to it so you can get notified of any other further reviews. I also do want to mention that this mouse was sent out to me by Pulsar themselves. Huge thanks for them, but rest assured that will not affect my opinion on this mouse whatsoever. Getting into the boring stuff, we start with the unboxing experience, which is actually quite premium even though I can't fucking get it out of the box. Obviously you get the freaking mouse inside of the box. You also get a very decent USB-A to USB-C cable, a freaking collector's card, a sticker, wow, a 1K receiver, and you also do get a dongle to plug in the receiver into, but I simply can't find mine right now. And since this is 4K compatible, there is a available 4K dongle, but you will have to buy this one separately. My unit comes in at around 56 grams. And yes, already mentioned, the QC is freaking rock solid with this one. I really do think that there is a reason to why they took so long to actually release the V3. And in terms of quality, it absolutely shows. I can freaking stubby squeeze this mouse and it will not break. There's no creaking, no flexing, just nothing. It's just pure quality. In terms of shape, this is very much an EC2 clone. If you're not familiar with the EC2, it is very much a centered hump. So even though it does look similar to the Thorn at a first glance, you can definitely see that the hump on the Xlite V3 is much more gradual, and it just doesn't have that aggressive bump that you can find here on the Lamso Thorn, where you can really rest your palm upon to do a really aggressive claw grip. Now, of course, you can still aggressive claw this thing. Just do remember that it is a much more gradual hump compared to something that is definitely more unique on the Lamso Thorn. But in terms of overall size, the Xlite V3 definitely feels a bit larger in hand. The Thorn simply feels a bit more short and more stubby. I would say that if you play a relaxed claw grip with 19x10 hands, I would actually go for the Xlite V3 medium instead, because when I do play a relaxed claw grip on the Thorn, my fingers do end up towards the front end of the mouse, whilst on the Xlite V3 I do have a tiny bit more space, but the difference between these mice is pretty minimal. But yeah, if you want more of a supportive, aggressive claw grip mouse, I would go for the Thorn. And if you want more of an EC2 clone with a hump that is more gradual and mellow, I would definitely go for the Xlite V3. The side profile is also pretty mellow, and it's just overall a very safe shape. I could definitely see somebody like Bortsy who finds the Thorn incredibly awkward enjoy the Xlite shape way more. But when talking about the shape, I also do want to mention that there will be a large model that will be called the size 3, and also just now the new mini size released, which I hope to also get my hands on. A mouse that I can also compare this to is definitely the Pawnage Stormbreaker. Overall in hand, the Stormbreaker definitely feels a bit smaller. I would say that the Stormbreaker sits right in between the size 1 and the size 2 from Pulsar, so it's between the mini and the medium. So if you would prefer that medium sized mouse, I definitely go for the Stormbreaker instead. But then again, it's a magnesium cheese grater, so that's a whole different story. But in terms of overall shape, they do feel very familiar to each other, with the Stormbreaker being ever so slightly altered from the original EC shape, but not as much as the Thorn. If you want to know which one you should pick out of these three, I will mention this in my opinion section later. In terms of coating, this one is actually pretty darn rubbery, and it's freaking amazing so far. The coating is definitely one of the biggest reasons why I actually do enjoy using this mouse so freaking much, because despite having this really cold and dry environment, I absolutely had no issues gripping this mouse whatsoever. And coming from the old Pulsar coatings, this one is just that much better. I can honestly not really see anybody having an issue with this coating. In terms of clicks, the optical implementation is probably my favorite so far, besides the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition. The clicks feel very close to mechanical. They are very snappy, not too heavy at all, but still also not too light. If you are afraid of going for a mouse with optical switches, you will be totally fine because you will not notice that huge huge of a difference. And from talking to other reviewers and also enthusiasts, basically everybody says that this is one of their favorite optical implementations and that it's simply a huge step up from what we used to have in the past. The side buttons have a bit of pre-travel, but it's honestly nothing that you feel in game, and they're these very spammable side buttons that just feel nice. Honestly, no matter what you play, these will be perfect, even for fucking Fortnite kiddies. The scroll also feels freaking perfect on my unit, and it does not feel cheap, which is actually an issue with some modern mice these days. The scroll is absolutely perfect. It's not too light, not too heavy. It has these defined steps, and the mouse free is also easily usable and not too heavy. And yeah, it's just overall solid so far. In terms of skates, they have these non-translucent PTFE skates that are dyed. I personally didn't have any issues with them on any of my mouse pads, so I actually did use the stock skates for a long time, and that's definitely saying something because I usually swap out for core pads instantly. They're not one of the top 3 or top 5 best stock skates, but they are absolutely fine. But if you do want something a bit faster, I would go for some aftermarket skates. In terms of battery life, the performance on 1K was phenomenal. I could easily use it for about a week, but when it comes to 4K, that's a whole different story. I had to charge this mouse quite a bit with my 4K dongle, but that might just be because I actually use this thing so fucking much, because I absolutely love it. But yeah, I'd say that you could easily get through a few days on 4K, but don't expect much more than that. Now, in terms of 4K, this dongle is fucking sick. It is probably the best looking 4K dongle out of all of them. I have had no issues with the 4K implementation whatsoever, but I do want to mention that the dongle actually costs $20 on their own store, which I do find is a bit too much. Compared to others who sell their dongles at $10 to $15, I definitely screw that price down a bit if I were Pulsar. In terms of software, it is pretty decent. Inside of it, you can directly change the motion sync, debounce time, and everything else. In terms of debounce time, I've had it at 2 milliseconds with no issues at all. Here you can also set your mouse to 4K once you have the dongle. You can also change your liftoff distance and set your Minecraft macros. If you actually want to pair your 4K dongle, you need to get another software that is called the pairing tool, and I will make sure to list everything down in the description for you. Now, when it comes to my personal opinion and also the conclusion of this entire mouse, I do want to mention that I simply yet again want to say that coming from Pulsar, especially on a first batch, this mouse is freaking amazing. If you're looking for the closest thing to an EC clone out there in a viable form factor these days with modern technology, this series in the mini, medium, and also the large version is something that you absolutely need to keep your eye on if you're at all interested. But when comparing these 3 mice, I do want to mention that the Pawn and Stormbreaker is also a solid option, and I think that this mouse is sort of slept on. But obviously a magnesium cheese grater is a whole different category than a $100 rock solid mouse with no holes. I do think that it is pretty difficult to choose between the Thorn and also the Xlite V3, but as Borzi also said in his video, the Thorn is definitely a bit of an awkward shape. I do think that I prefer it for aggressive claw grip, but since I kind of feel more at home with the EC2 clone type beat, especially after having mains the EC2 for freaking years back in the days, I lean more towards the Xlite for sure. I don't want to talk down on the Thorn whatsoever though, and I do think there's a reason why this was the mouse of the year in 2023. But if you want to know more about the Thorn, definitely go check out my full review on it. But yeah, who is this mouse actually for? If you want that EC clone type beat, if you're looking for a new large ergonomic mouse, get the large version that will be out very soon. If you want an EC3 clone, get the Xlite V3 Mini. They simply have everything now, and whilst they're not complete one-to-one clones, I do think that these mice are absolutely perfect. I do, however, have to mention who this mouse is not for. Obviously, this is not a mouse for somebody who loves symmetrical mice, but I also would say that for monkey and pawn grippers, the Thorn actually does feel quite a bit better in hand. I of course also think that the stock skate experience is better on the Thorn, and I do actually prefer using an aggressive claw grip on the Thorn, but other than that, it's really difficult not to recommend this thing at $100. I do think think that it is priced absolutely perfectly, especially considering that Lamsu actually produces all their stuff in-house with their own manufacturer, and they can produce it so freaking cheaply, whilst Pulsar can't even imagine such margins. But I would love to see the 4K dongle being slightly cheaper. Other than that, that's really about it. I freaking love this mouse, and I think I've said that enough for today. And if you also love this content, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and also the bell right next to it to be notified of all further reviews. And that's about it. Peace out.